Yeah.
And I guess that's actually what we should discuss now, are the various versions.
We've done a lot of talking about forest, caves, mines, even some ruins. We never really...
Yeah. They'll be quicker, because they got lazier. So Kirby, lead us up on the history.
Sure. As was mentioned, there was a second version of the original game for the Dreamcast, which came out within a year of being released, and added a lot of nice things like the quick equipment menu that you got from holding the right trigger and pushing the Y button, the player versus player modes and challenge mode, lobby soccer, which was always fun, and the photon chairs. It also had ultimate difficulty, and they tried to prevent some of the absolutely rampant cheating and crashing of other people's Dreamcasts that went on.
Oh, because in the Dreamcast versions, your character you played in the offline mode was stored on your memory card. It was one character per memory card. Mm-hmm. And that's the same character you took online, which meant you could use cheat devices at home extremely easily.
Yeah, there were also things like some hacks that could straight up destroy your Dreamcast or your memory card. That was always great, and they never really did anything about that.
They tried, but a little bit.
Yeah.
It's Sega, so...
Shrug.
Yeah.
Try is not enough.
Even in the original game, the network data that was sent was actually just entirely plain text. It wasn't even compressed or anything, so it was very easy to read and manipulate. That was also when they introduced the subscription fee, which was initially $15 for 3 months, which wasn't actually too bad compared to what you would pay for something like EverQuest or World of Warcraft.
Yeah, that's works out to $5 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where things today are like $10.
And this was actually, because the Dreamcast came out before the advent of cable internet or anything had really spread, so this was through 56K modem. People had pretty good connection experiences with SegaNet when it worked, but that was 56K, but this game worked online, like this action-heavy game, which was pretty impressive at the time.
Even more so in Europe, where the Dreamcasts came with a 36.6K modem instead of the 56K. Fantastic.
You could notice some of the ways they got it to work, like in multiplayer, you would notice people attacking enemies that when they're halfway across the room. So they didn't really, what one character was doing in an area wasn't exactly what you were seeing them doing.
Yeah. There wasn't a whole lot of syncing except for bosses.
Which I'm fine with, though even in modern day, it's still, on newer versions over, faster internet speeds it happens. It's very bizarre looking.
It's kind of jarring. Mm-hmm. That version also got ported to the PC, though it was only sold in Japan and Asia, but it still had English language support, so if you were playing it on an English version of Windows, it was just basically the same as the Dreamcast. And that actually played with the Dreamcast servers, if I remember right. The year after that, Sega had actually gone third party, mainly due to Okawa's death and the drying up of their funds, and they released Episode 1 and 2 for the GameCube, which was a really big change, adding 3 new classes, being the Ramal, Fomar, and Hukasil. A bunch of balanced stuff, rare weapons having their own unique looks, which was a really nice change, and an entire 4 new areas with story and quest and monsters and bosses to go along with them.
Well, 2 entirely new areas with entirely new monsters.
Yeah, there was a lot of reskinning.
Yeah, which is the same thing they had on the Xbox, though you also needed an Xbox Live subscription and the subscription fee.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to play offline, you needed Xbox Live.
And if you had the GameCube version, then you needed to find one of the rare online accessories for the GameCube, which some people don't even think had online support, which is how minimal it was.
Yeah, I have it.
Even those were, they paired with your system or something? Could have been just someone trying to bullshit me out of looking for one.
Those versions also brought in the full-player split screen, which was very, very good.
That's how I played a large chunk of it. The first time I played on the Dreamcast, I didn't really understand the game fully, But once I got the GameCube version, I was a little older. I was in high school by that point.
Yeah.
And
It just kind of
split screen, which cuts out all the story elements, and you can't do quests.
Also, you can't see the stats of your weapons.
You can't. You have to switch the display.
Yeah.
It's very awkward, but I guess they had to fit it on. Especially, this is way before HD TVs became a thing, so unless you just had a giant CRT like projection television or maybe a plasma screen TV, it wasn't happening.
Yeah, I remember playing Phantasy Star Online episode 1 and 2 on like a little car television on family trips. It was the best.
Yeah, I remember hooking up the Xbox version and crowding around with 2 other friends and then a dinky little 34cm TV, and it was simultaneously the best and the worst thing.
Yeah.
Oh, the first time I tried that with my friends in high school, I hadn't seen episode 2, so after we made our characters, I'm like, oh man, I want to see episode 2. And that is a terrible, terrible idea for me who hadn't seen it, and for them who had never played Phantasy Star Online before.
The GameCube version also got re-released the next year as Episode 1 and 2 Plus, which was mainly just to plug an exploit that allowed you to use PSO to load GameCube ISOs over a network and play those instead.
Yeah, if you wanted to pirate it. It's also very expensive.
That same year had Episode 3, which is an entirely different game that you play with cards, using existing assets and that sort of thing. 2004 had the kind of last release of PSO, which was Blueburst for Windows. It contained everything from Episode 1 and 2, apart from a split screen, as well as a new episode, which they dubbed as Episode 4.
Yeah. Also, no offline play anymore. Just plug that hole.
That was probably for the best. So that had 2 new areas. One new boss, the worst enemy Sega has ever thought of. Which we'll get to, I guess. They also did redo all the textures, and they look really, really nice.
Yeah.
Making it more MMO-y by adding teams, which were kind of lackluster guilds.
Yeah, I guess that's a misconception a lot of people have when I mention Phantasy Star Online. It's not a massive multiplayer online game like World of Warcraft. There's a lobby section with a bunch of other players. You form a team of 4 people tops, and then you just go into areas and fight stuff. There's no world exploration or anything like that.
It's more Diablo or Borderlands than Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah. I guess the closest analog these days would be Monster Hunter.
Yeah. Definitely a direct influence on Monster Hunter.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, it also had the hotbar using the number keys that you could put text and items onto, which was quite nice.
Yeah, anything to not have to fumble with the sub-menu.
And it's actually, it lets you do one thing that even a lot of modern games with a gamepad support don't do, is you could still use the hotbar if you had a gamepad. Most games, since they have console versions, you get a separate interface entirely where you can do everything with a gamepad, but you still can't use the conveniences of a keyboard that's inevitably right in front of you in most cases anyway.
That's one thing that PSO2 did, is that you can still use the hotbar with your controller.
And also there's only text chat, so you need the keyboard to talk to your teammates at all.
Well, there was also symbol chat, which was the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And there was an in-game on-screen keyboard.
There was also the sentence builder.
Sentence builder is how they got around the language barrier, because it used preset phrases. So you'd say, looking for saber in forest, which is a pointless message to send to someone, but you can send it. And it'll, since it's made of discrete chunks, they're pre-translated for the local language, so they'll see it in German or Japanese or whatever.
The problem with that was it really didn't take sentence structure into account.
Yeah, well, that's why it's even bizarre in English.
Yeah, you end up with stuff like, the Meseta, can I have it, everybody?
You can, then save an auto word type thing out, but there were certain ones that only were available in certain situations. Specifically, there was one in challenge mode that I believe was just this extremely long block of wall of text that was just, a weapon doesn't have to have high numbers to be powerful. You have to examine the attributes to make sure it's still good there, too, or something like that. And so what I had some friends of mine did is that we all just got one into challenge mode one day and saved that phrase to be something we can just pull up even outside of that. And we just went out into the lobby and blocked everyone's screens.
Yeah, because that's how, when people say something, that's how it appears, as a little speech bubble from them.
Yeah.
Like, each one easily took up like a quarter of the screen.
There were 4 of you. Okay, so me, Symbol Chat.
So, Symbol Chat was basically, you had like a little box, or you could choose like a box, a circle, a triangle, or hexagon, or something like that. And then you could put little like things on it to make it into a face. There were a lot of interesting things you could do with that.
Yep.
Yeah, so you could just like make a little personalized faces with that would carry like customized sounds and things like that. And just, it was a fun little way to spam really ridiculous things to people. Because most of the time you were not using it for serious purposes.
Like, the idea is just you could express a sort of emotion, like, sad, and then have like a potion, like, oh, I'm out of potions and I'm sad. Or you could use it to say, I have a volcano face. Does that communicate an idea? Not really, but it's amusing.
You can tell people what really grinds your gears.
Yeah, I had some really weird ones going on just so I could spam them.
Some of the default ones were interesting, like that. There was one like really creepy looking face and it just said like, yes, good.
Is there anything else about Blueburst?
The new area sucked.
Other than the fact that it got shut down.
Oh yeah. That's right.
The first time I played Blueburst was on an unofficial server, which is the strength, I guess you could say, of it, is that you can still play it even though Sega has not supported it for ages.
Yeah. So, the GameCube and Dreamcast version servers died in 2007, and then Xbox and Blueburst went down in 2008, which I kind of want to say was because Phantasy Star Universe's expansion came out in 2007, and they probably wanted to say, hey, go and play this, guys, it's better. But
it didn't help that Blueburst at that time on the English servers was so broken, it was basically unplayable for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, if you tried to log in, it wouldn't even let you get close to it, and they had no interest in fixing it. Also, the Xbox version had Eternal Christmas, so...
It shut down when it did, probably only because they realized it was still running.
Yeah, they found the server in the closet somewhere and were like, oh wow, we forgot to turn this off.
Yeah, that is one thing with playing online, is there's different holiday events.
Yeah.
So there's like Christmas, which will change some decorations in some areas, and it would replace the rare version of the rag grab the enemy with the holiday themed and drop something different. But yeah, they didn't really care for the Xbox version.
At least maybe 2007's Christmas, at the very least, was the one where it stopped. It just stopped. They forgot to turn it off. I mean, someone could probably try to tell me that even like 2006 was still Christmas.
And I mean, it's like Sega of America really didn't care, or they didn't have the authority to do anything about it. So it was just like the Japanese servers were decently moderated and generally would work fine, but the English servers were always broken, and like if you logged on, if you played online, you were guaranteed at some point either all your inventory would be deleted or all your characters would be deleted. So it was not a good online experience, to say the least.
Yeah.
At the very least, if you disconnected, if you just like turned off the console instead of exiting properly, like I did a lot early on. Yeah, they're like, no. And then, goodbye, your items. And then I come on and was like, oh, my items.
Yeah.
Even without that, between like every iteration of PSO, there was just so much hacking, there's so many bugs, the game would just crash and delete your characters, even like GameCube, Xbox, PC, everything would do it.
Somewhat emblematic of a Dreamcast release. They didn't account for people's ill will in the design.
Yep.
The Dreamcast, people won't pirate it, they'll buy it. No, they won't. Format extremely easy to pirate, they'll pirate.
Whoops.
People won't hack, they absolutely will. They won't hack to destroy other people's games, yes they will.
Oh, yeah. And, if you were online, basically, if you ever traded with someone, you were basically not playing legit, because no one played legit.
Like, my first experience in PSO Xbox was that I logged in, and then this, level 160 dude just joins, comes in, just dumps a bunch of red boxes onto the floor and says, "See ya," and then leaves.
Yeah. Oh, that's an important distinction. In the Dreamcast version of Phantasy Star Online, rare items come in their regular item type box. So it's orange for weapons, and blue for armor, green for items. And it's kind of muted color palettes. In the GameCube and onward versions, rare items showed up in a bright red box with thick white trim on it.
Which everyone immediately ignored any enemy when they saw one. They bolted straight to the box.
Yep.
Yeah, item drops are not instants for different players, so you see it, they see it, whoever gets it first. That's the law of the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, but an important distinction is the original Dreamcast release of Phantasy Star Online came with another disc. It was a demo for Sonic Adventure 2.
Yes.
Where you got to play the City Escape level with the infamous song, but no lyrics yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my brother and I were very surprised when we bought Sonic Adventure 2 and heard, "Oh yeah, yeah."
Yeah, that explains more so of them using that song when they did the anniversary thing for PSO2, come to think of it. Yeah, that's one of my first experiences, I guess, was similar to NextTime, was creating a room, and I really didn't know what I was doing. Some nice Japanese guy came in and dumped a bunch of red boxes and Meseta all over the ground. They just pulled out of the bank and said, "Do you need any of these?" I sort of took a couple and didn't want to be too greedy, and I was like, "Oh wow, thank you very much." And he was just like, "Yep," and just left without even picking them up.
I remember getting on and just getting a plus 255 knee claw. And
it doesn't go that high, by the way, the pluses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was something like 200% against natives. So,
which is a native creature type, by the way. That could sound really insensitive.
Yeah.
If you don't know what we're talking about.
Oh god, yes.
That's the enemies in the forest and related.
Yeah.
That's what native means.
So every attack with that, and especially a special attack, would do something like 20,000 damage to them, and that broke the game.
I'm surprised the game's damage readouts even support numbers that high, because that's impossible.
Yeah, it was hilariously broken. I love it.
Yeah, I don't think I had anything explicitly hacked like that beyond, over on Xbox land, they weren't, I didn't recall seeing as many blatantly hacked things like that. Besides, there were units. Their name was not any standard unit convention name, it was just MAG.
Oh.
And it gave you,
oh yeah.
It gave you maybe a quarter of the amount of attack power you could have before you capped the stat.
Yeah. I remember I also got a, black Sato, which was level 255 and just had ridiculous stats that made it able to... So, at level 30, I could equip Knee's Claw.
Yeah. An interesting facet of the game, well, that actually ties into the hacking, is there's some weapons you find where they, instead of having a prefix, the names will be in blue and they'll have a bunch of question marks. And you take it to a character in the shop called a Techer who identifies it for you. Additionally, if the weapon has special, a plus after it, or, the prefix you can actually change, and also percentages, which 4 are damage types against certain enemies, and there's a hidden 5th one that only shows up if you have it for hit, which is ridiculous, but you can identify it, and you can keep trying, and he'll change the quality of the prefix and the percentages. But it became pretty common, like, once word of hacking got around, if someone tries to give you an unidentified item, you shouldn't take it. Because why would they give it to you?
Another thing on the Xbox version was that there was like an item duplication glitch, which like involved you being able to regain control of your character, but you're still in one of the shop menus, and then you just have to blindly guide your character out of the shop area and over to the bank, so that you could get the bank and like the bank menu up, but then also be able to get your inventory up at the same time. And then I guess the idea was to drop an item in one step, like, because you're controlling both menus with the same inputs. So you have to drop the item in one step, then the next step deposit in the bank. If you messed up and did it so that both you were dropping the item as you were depositing it, that crashed your game. But yeah, you could duplicate items that way. They patched it not too long after like I started playing, but I discovered a way around it for myself, because back when I played Mech Assault a whole lot, my Xbox started doing funny things where it wouldn't load the match once the lobby launched the game. So I just bought a new Xbox instead of sending it in to get repaired. So I had two Xboxes and an Xbox memory card. So I was able to take my character, take the items I want to duplicate, transfer them to the memory card, go to a different TV with the other Xbox, and just play on a version of the game before it was patched, and duplicate the items there, then transfer it all back. It was hilariously, extremely high effort.
Retro gaming at its finest.
It was just so much effort, and it's not like I had anyone counting on me to do it.
Yeah.
Also, a really popular hack at that time. So in Blue Burst, I think they removed it. They removed you dropping your equipped weapon and your Masada on death.
Did that in Xbox.
The GameCube version did too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and prior to that, if you died, you would drop your weapon, and everyone in the room could pick it up. So some people made hacks so that the healing spell, Resta, would kill you. So they would just spam Resta to kill everyone in the room, and then steal all their shit.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yep. Alright, so, criticisms. I mean, we've been doing them all along, but,
Sure.
I mean, this is not just to criticize, but how we could fix it. 1, attack accuracy. Make it have the function of block and be related to whether you get a critical hit.
Yeah.
And take out the miss mechanic entirely. It doesn't really add anything that the maneuvering that you have to do to, like, physically dodge attacks doesn't.
I know in Universe that you could get behind enemies and have 100% accuracy.
I never missed in Universe. Is that a statistical thing?
Yeah, it was still a thing in Universe, because beasts were supposed to be the lower.
I remember in Phantasy Star 2 Portable, it was possible for characters to have so much evasion that they basically couldn't ever be hit by a physical attack at all.
Well, that's a definite. Okay, so yeah, that change, definitely.
Class balance is kind of a problem in Phantasy Star Online.
Yeah.
There were a lot of classes that but not just Ranger and Force and Hunter, but also some of the variants. Casts in general weren't quite as good as the other characters, since Shifta and the band was so important to the game.
Yeah.
They were, but then later on, you could even still find ways around that, even. Like, I think some of the challenge mode rewards would even let you apply a Shifta and D-band effect, which if I recall, seeing somewhere at least in version 1 in the Dreamcast stuff, that version of Shifta and D-band was like level 31 or something. Stronger than anything that was even possible.
Yeah. So, I guess as a quick aside, challenge mode, it's been mentioned a couple times, There's a mode they added where you start areas with a set level and equipment, and just work with what you find, and the goal is to beat the areas quickly, and if your combined time is low enough, then you'll get an S ranking, which earns you rewards, which are weapons, which through a bunch of miscellany, you can add whatever special effect you want onto it, and it won't be reduced if it's a multi-hit or, multi-target weapon. And the grind thing, which is the plus after the weapon, which increases its damage, was pretty high for all of them, so you could add 200 damage or more.
And if I also recall, when you did earn one, you could name it, I think.
Yeah, you can name it.
Yeah.
In some cases, the S-rank weapons were also worthwhile in some cases, like the S-rank twin machine guns, if you left them ungrinded, but, say, attached the EXP steal ability onto them. You could do really stupid things like buy a special Xbox controller that knows how to pulse the buttons instead of just mashing it. Taping down those buttons for days and just go into seabed, find a room with a Rico box in it, clear out all the recons and all the other enemies, and just stand there with ungrinded S-rank twin machine guns and go to town. And you could probably get to level 150, 60 that way before you begin dealing 1 damage to the Rico box with the extra attack.
So let's talk about hilarious bullshit enemies.
Can we talk about episode 2 in general really quick?
Yeah.
Quick overview?
Sure.
Alright, so this was added in the GameCube and Xbox versions. Mm-hmm. And the first 2 areas take the versus mode from version 2, which is garbage. But this game system's not made to fight other people.
Nope.
It's not a great experience at all.
The PvP experience is match start, you just got hit by Zonde and died.
Yeah. Instant kill weapons, those work on this difficulty.
But yeah, the idea here is just say Zonde, you don't even need line of sight. Once you get in range of Zonde, you can just start hitting them with it.
Yeah. Zonde is the only other way you can get a long-range attack without a rifle. It's comparable. Episode 2, the science team finds an island.
They get a transmission.
Yeah.
That leads them there.
But for the lab to allow you to go to the island, they want you to undertake a VR test. And that means area recycling, because the first area, the VR temple, is one of the versus mode stages, and the second area, the VR spaceship, is the other versus mode stage.
Yep.
They did add some music so that there'd be calm exploring music.
Trick track is really good.
I remember the backside of the Xbox, on the backside of the box. There's just this picture of a Ramar swinging a saber at Adele's saber in the spaceship. It's positioned just perfectly to almost look like they're interlocking their sabers in a heated combat. But
good old, yeah.
I was alright with them reusing Spaceship though, because I really, really like Spaceship.
Yeah, Spaceship is cool.
Yeah.
Temple is blocks.
Yeah.
Temple sucks.
Yeah, it's really, the music is. It's decent, but and it's the calm theme is especially pretty decent. It fits with the mood of the game, more so. But they take the verticality of the ruins and just punch you in the face with it.
Yeah.
The traps also, the surprise traps, lots of those. It's just gotcha the area.
And then there's just places that you're just stuck in the walk animation because there's traps everywhere.
Yeah.
And then on Ultimate Mode, it's filled with orb lilies.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's another thing we didn't explain. In version 2 of the Dreamcast added Ultimate difficulty, which, when you get to it, there's a few changes. First of all, Pioneer 2 is no longer floating, outside of the atmosphere of Regal. You're actually in there. There's clouds and stuff instead of stars. You're a little lower to the ground, which is interesting. And also, the areas look different. There's a bit of a different design aesthetic to them. And the enemies, not all of them, but most of them, are different to a pretty extensive degree in some cases. the Boomas in the forest were just like bare board things with really ugly faces. There's the 3 levels of Boomas in regular, but in Ultimate, it's a turtle, a bigger turtle, and then a praying mantis is the 3rd level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the thing I mentioned about Monthness earlier that I never got to is on normal they die in very few hits. They're almost instantly killed. But on hard and above, they take a lot of hits to kill and they do a lot of damage, so suddenly they're nightmarish. And this is really bad on Ultimate.
Yeah. Ultimate was... Well, it was hard.
Oh, and stuff moves faster on the higher difficulties, and on Ultimate, everything just...
Everything is a race car.
Yeah. The animations don't even make sense anymore for the walking. Because everything's gliding across the floor at top speed to murder you. You also have fewer invincibility frames.
It was really neat how everything sort of changed like that. Yeah. And Forest was probably the biggest one because it sort of goes into this weird, almost like infected orange sort of look.
That's true.
But, man, some of the enemies were just kind of...
As you could progress through difficulties and episodes, it's just like there's just this middle finger that's just slowly rising.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Like, and it really came out in Ultimate. It was just like...
Yeah, that's when it impales you on the middle finger.
Yeah.
The bosses get changed. So the dragon tunnels underground a lot more, moves way faster, and has ice breath instead of fire, which can freeze you, which is the worst thing that can possibly happen.
Yep.
Because you can still take damage, and you have no invincibility when you're frozen. Then Darale, the worm, gets replaced with Dalralai, which he moves fast. Again, they all move faster. But also, when he turns the lights off, he does this laser attack, which if you just sort of move parallel to him, it'll miss you, because it sort of tracks where you were. This time, I don't know how it works on Ultimate. Sometimes you get hit, sometimes you don't. Volop gets replaced with Volop version 2, which is the least creative name, but it's just harder.
Yeah.
Like, you could do things that would stop you from getting hit, and they won't really work.
Mm-hmm.
And Dark Files is the same, but his instant kill spell will kill you if it hits you, so keep moving.
Yeah.
Episode 2, the first 2 areas we mentioned, the VR Temple and VR Spaceship, have just a selection of enemies from Episode 1, just spread out.
It's just a grab bag of different enemies from different areas put together as one big happy family.
Yeah, and this is a problem in the caves, but it's especially difficult with the mix of enemies on Ultimate, is that the lilies which spit poison, which is not that bad of a status effect, like your health drains and you have to deal with the sound effect, and also the lilies laugh at you when they poison you, which is just...
Oh yes, I love that little detail.
Yeah.
I love it, but man, it makes you so mad. And if you're an android, you can't get poisoned, so then they laugh at you, but you just keep shooting them in the face, whatever. But yeah, on Ultimate, the lilies spit the instant kill spell. All of them. So, suddenly rooms where you just stood in the middle and just shot them all, and they laughed at you, and you laughed it off as well. No, you're dead.
Now it becomes a deadly game of dodgeball.
Yeah. And they still laugh.
I mean, also, if you're within a certain range of them, they would, and after damaging them somewhat, they would, do this scream that would paralyze you. That was the more annoying thing on them.
Yeah. Paralysis was annoying. It's not really bad, because you can usually run away, and you have to use an item, or get healed, or die, to get rid of paralysis. It lasted forever, it was really annoying. But that's what it was, annoying. Dying is a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe once they realize of taking away a good chunk of the death penalty, they decided, now that there's not too much of a holding us back from a player dying, let's just take the wheels out.
If they die, it's no big deal, so why not kill them as much as possible?
Indeed.
Yeah.
And they did.
The only problem is that with bosses, if you died, you get to restart the whole fight again.
Yep.
Yeah, if you used up all your resources in a fight, and you didn't win, like if you want to reset the areas, you can start a quest or leave and start over again. That'll reset the areas, but yeah, if you're out those resources, you're out.
Yep.
Especially bad if you've been saving up escape dolls, which are items that bring you back to life when you die. Those are used automatically, you can't opt out. So if you brought them all into let's say the Dark Fowls battle, and you actually can't survive his attacks, just quit the game, because you're not going to leave. And you're going to use up all your escape dolls trying. So, I mean, there's a micro criticism there, but yeah, episode 2, once you get to the other 2 areas, there's...
The fun begins.
Yeah. They're a little stretched out, but they are interesting. The enemies there are sort of combinations of enemies from episode 1 into one enemy.
With a few, looks like I think a little bit of some new things. Oh no, I think a good chunk of them are new.
Yeah. And they continue the thing from the first 2 areas, where it's not just like this area is all robots and this area is all like altered beast enemies. There's a mix, so you'll be fighting like camouflaging ninja robots and then walking flower people.
And a bunch of like mountain apes.
Yeah, which have like the wolf logic, but then they can also spit fireballs at you. Because the wolves will circle around you and try to jump at you when they're behind you. In the forest of episode 1. And these enemies work on a similar path. And there's like an alpha version of them that if you kill them, the other ones in episode 1 they get sad and get weaker, but in this one they get upset.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then, like, the first area kind of had introduced some, like, mini-bosses rather than... Like some shorter areas with mini-bosses first before the first major boss of the area of episode 2.
Yeah. Oh, those are really cool, actually, because the area darkens when they appear. So, like, if you don't see them spawn in, then you know something's up.
And, like, each of the main types, like, you have once you're in the mountain area, you fight Gibbles.
The big ape is named Gibbles.
Yeah.
And then the giant flower one, I think was that Mary Carroll?
Something like that.
Yeah, it's the Pokemon name. But yeah, that one's giant. That one spawns in a pretty tight space, so that one is kind of unnerving, especially because, it seems like it's a turret. It's a giant turret with slashing claws. It can move, it can run at you. It's very upsetting when that happens.
The coastal area has the geese, which kind of function just like the little Candidine dudes, or how you pronounce that?
The Canadians.
Yeah, from the mines.
Little swarm robots. Yeah. They either shoot you with like lightning after they lock onto you, and they also can sting you up close, which these enemies also do, just with stingers.
And so like the coast area had Geegu or something, which was just like a large bee that with a bazooka butt or something.
Yep, yeah, it could launch a bomb at you, which you might not see, which means you're just fighting it and then you just explode.
If you had the right section ID, it'll drop his butt and then you can get bazooka.
Yep.
They also changed up the bosses in the first 2 areas.
Yeah.
I don't think we mentioned that.
Yeah.
There was Barbara Ray, which was just Dayrolay, except
bright.
cuter?
Yeah, it was brighter, faster, cuter.
You had friends.
Yeah.
His beam attack, though, was way cooler sounding, because it sounded like it was powered by angels or something. It's ridiculous.
And then there was Gold Dragon.
This is where the mistakes start, like, in game design, before any difficulty is considered.
Gold Dragon.
So, in normal mode, Gold Dragon summons a duplicate of himself who has all the attacks that do the same amount of damage, but as far as I know, those duplicates don't take damage.
You have to do a certain amount of damage to dispel them, because they're sort of illusion clones.
But they don't directly affect the Gold Dragon.
It doesn't damage the boss's health. It's just how much health it takes for them to dissipate.
But they can still damage you, and it likes to inflict status effects, especially freeze, and half its attacks cover the entire area. So you're basically trying to figure out which one is the real Gold Dragon, while at the same time the other one attacks you and kills you.
Oh, you want to kill the fake one anyway, because you're not going to be able to manage more than one.
But if you try to kill the fake one, once you killed it, sometimes it'll just get summoned right back. immediately.
Yeah.
So basically, it covers while you're attacking one, the other is attacking you, and you can't really dodge both of them meaningfully at the same time.
Not at all.
And then in very hard and ultimate, now instead of summoning one duplicate, it summons 2 of them. And basically resummons them instantly.
Yeah, they looked at this fight and then thought, this isn't hard enough. What can we do?
Yeah.
In addition to the numbers get bigger and the boss moves faster on high difficulty still, that's not gone, that element. But they also did this because there's no penalty for dying. It's fine. It's fine.
You'll try it again. You'll come back.
And the boss had so much health already.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah. And what's really unfortunate too is Gold Dragon's Arena is a really cool idea.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I loved how, to tell which one was the fake, you would look at the screens in the background, and the fake one would not appear on the screen.
Yeah, it's like it was broadcasting you to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess the lab staff is watching it, but I don't know why they need, like, Sunday going on.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. Also, Gold Dragon, when he enters the boss arena, he comes out of a computer screen, too.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think really the main setup from story-wise is that, like, the data there was just sort of constructed partially with data taken from dragon encounters on Rhaegal, but also with some sort of legend of a dragon back from Coral.
Yeah, so... Yeah, they just combined a bunch of dragons, like, this is a good test.
Yes.
Something that otherwise doesn't exist. Also, the VR angle falls apart, because these enemies still drop rare items. Meaning the VR dragon drops a real, like, knuckle weapon that you might need very bad.
Well, it's kind of like they found these things, and there's just like some asshole behind a control panel and says, they earned it.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Then, yeah, when you move on to the island area, there's the sub-bosses, which are pretty interesting. And then, well, after you do the sub-areas, the coast, the mountains, and the jungle? But yeah, once you clear those, there's security locks in each section you deactivate, and then the big door in this central control area opens, and this is populated mostly by the robots you were fighting earlier. In fact, one type of ninja robot only appears in this area, and has a 1 out of 20,000, 60,000 something drop rate for a handgun for rangers that can do Dark Falls' Heaven Punisher attack, but only at certain times. But yeah, it comes from this enemy, so you have to do those 3 areas unless you use a glitch in the old versions to get through the door. And yeah, that's your chance for getting this weapon. Yeah, game design. But and this area is just like an obstacle course, pretty much. It's just a ton of traps and enemies. You break through that, and you fight Galgriffin.
It was just another reskin dragon.
I love the soundtrack for...
it's going into this discussion for sure.
Yeah. It's one of the best songs in the game.
Yeah, that said, the boss fight, it's interesting. It does some interesting things, but it's sort of just... It's also a very annoying fight.
He has lots of area of effect attacks, lots of stuff that you would need to take up to be aware of all your surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, continuing theme from Gold Dragon, it's an idea that's probably too good for both the way Phantasy Star Online works and Sonic Team's ability to execute it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's a dragon boss in Castlevania, Curse of Darkness on the PS2, which is kind of in a similar arena, but in that game, you can jump, so there's that, even if you're using close-range weapons. And you can, like, get on top of the dragon when it takes off to, like, do damage to it in the sky and things like that. A lot of other games that have you fight flying enemies give you that. In this case, there's not much you can do if you don't have a very good ranged weapon.
Yeah.
And then... Seabed.
Seabed is... This is where they started trying to... It seems like they had a wrong idea of how the balance of the game played out, because being a hunter here is very difficult. Because the standard enemy's
Yeah.
basic ranged attack, only the partisan has longer range. Nothing else is outside of their reach, so you have to circle around them, or you have to use guns.
Yep.
Playing a close-range character, no, you're not. Use guns.
Oh yeah, like the squid dudes, right?
Yeah, Dolmalm and Dolmalm.
Oh,
Yeah. I think when I did melee stuff, I would just run up on them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that with enough levels. You can survive anything in this game.
Like I would run at them at an angle or something. I don't know. Oh wait, I remember slicers.
Yeah, slicers. Well, those are a ranged weapon. They're just more geared towards
Yeah.
hunters. Yeah, I mean that's true,
Pretty much.
but again, different playstyle, and also they're kind of sluggish, which doesn't help with the tight quarters and the enemies with long reach. Again, you
Yeah.
can't quite get away from them as
Yeah.
much.
yeah.
And there are some interesting enemy ideas here. Again, like, the main enemies are in any area, it's sort of, you can take it or leave it, but some of the side enemies here are pretty interesting. Like, there's a charging enemy that's really pretty scary, but they don't throw too many of them
Yeah.
at you.
But he usually, when he spawns in, he's usually spawning in mid-charge
Yes.
behind you.
A theme they made even worse with an enemy in episode 4, which we'll get to, alright.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy.
I always just loved entering a room that was just silent, and then, like, you were like, he's coming, I know you're, where is it? And then I'm like, show yourself, and then I get hit by a train.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't see an enemy, like, spawn in, then they might require you to, like, get close enough to trigger them. But if you don't see anything, it sort of zigzags, so there's a chance you're already moving out of the way when it appears. Is the best advice I can give for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's an enemy that charges up and fires lasers at you, but won't attack if it's not on screen, which I'm not sure is even intentional, but it's there.
And I think it also like has like a kind of a forward-facing shield when it's spamming its lasers too.
Yeah. And the version of this Sinnoh, like, ninja robot enemies here, if they punch you, your weapon gets unequipped, and you have to re-equip it. Which is, I mean, it's not a terrible idea.
It's an exercise in frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of area design, like, this again has a lot of vertical... This is one of the few places where you go through a room, but you'll enter it from different directions, because the one entrance you're on an upper walkway, and then you'd come into it from either side to get to the rest of the room. And again, you're going to need guns because the enemies on the lower or higher areas where you're not, namely the Rico boxes, can still attack you. Well, they can spawn enemies that attack you.
The Rico box could spawn 10 recons, which also, like the Darvins from Dark Falls, had a buzzsaw effect that if you didn't get knocked down, you were going to die.
Yeah, in a complete, step away from the idea that these are somehow rampant military robots. Recons which pop out of Rico boxes are cute little cat heads with a buzzsaw that pops open out of their mouth made of photons.
Their head splits in two laterally, and this buzzsaw comes out.
Yeah, and they make cute little, whoop noises. Military robots.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Can you get a mag that looks like a Recon?
I don't think so.
think so.
Man.
I mean, you can get the Fox mag, and I'm sure there was a cat mag. I don't remember one, though.
Why would you pick anything but hamburger?
Why would you pick anything but Master System? Excuse me, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That is one thing we didn't mention about mags, but if they have certain stats when they level up, and if you have certain items you can give to them, then they'll turn into other forms. It's sort of a meta game, high level in some cases, like what stats they'll have and abilities, but really, I mean, if you want it to look like a Dreamcast is floating next to you, healing you, and bouncing happily when you feed it, then that's an entirely aesthetic choice.
Or a burger.
Yes, or a burger.
Yes, the burger.
You must find the kit of hamburger, though. Do it. Yeah, so there's some interesting ideas, but again, it's just the anime seems really frustrating, is the problem.
Seabed is really, really long, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's only 2 areas, but they are very long areas.
Yeah. And outside of, the interesting sort of wet floor...
If I didn't like the music so much, I probably wouldn't have spent as much time.
Yeah. Music's good. But the there's like some wet floors in some areas. Like it does feel like a seabed area, and there's like some tunnels where you can see the water outside. But the design stays pretty consistent through the two areas. It's not that interesting aesthetically.
Another thing, I think they kind of might do it a little bit in the previous episode 2 areas, but quite apparent in Seabed is when they start spawning enemies in the hallways between rooms.
Yep. Yeah. They do that in the VR temple occasionally, but that's again more of a gotcha there. But here you get halfway through, you see that the other end of the hallway is locked, and then you get to the other halfway through the hallway, and Nozo was spawned at both ends of the hallway. Yep.
So you see the one in front of you because you see its reflection maybe in the window, and you take care of it, and then you get disarmed because of the guy behind you.
Yeah. That is another cool idea. Even when the enemies use their stealth, they somehow have a reflection. I don't even know how that works, but they have a reflection in
it's like
water.
Maybe like just like a forward optical camouflage type thing. Like
it's just fooling
concealing.
you.
It's concealing itself from your perspective.
Yeah, that's true. In any case, it's a cool gimmick, but they're still pretty frustrating to fight because they can also phase out, and they'll generally teleport behind you.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get up, if they knock you down, they teleported behind you again. Bring a friend.
Yeah, definitely. For episode 2, don't solo it. Don't solo it.
You can, and I have, but you need to grind so many levels elsewhere to do it that...
Or you get a hell weapon, because everything that presents a problem in Seabed is hilariously weak to Miijhal.
Yeah, dark attacks. They have really low dark resistance. That's something weird that they... Again, this is an advantage Rangers have in this episode, needlessly, but there you go. I mean, there are close-range hell weapons, but that's fewer shots because the animations are a little longer, and you have to put yourself at risk anyway to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're on a melee guy who sometimes probably doesn't have as much accuracy as a ranger.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if you do a hell attack and it fails, you just miss, so you can't stun the enemies and you don't harm them. Honestly, in those cases, it's good to have a weapon with the Devils or Demons special, which cut down enemies' HP by fraction. That's more effective, and you're gonna need it anyway for later. And also, instant kill weapons and health subtracting or cutting weapons don't work on bosses. So, as hilarious as it would be to get to the next boss and instantly kill him, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we should just discuss that now.
And at the end of the Seabed, you got the end boss of episode 2.
Olgaflow, who the backstory is there's another legendary warrior on Pioneer 1 named Heathcliff Flowing, who also fought Dark Balls, was infected with the parasitic gene from fighting him, but escaped.
What had happened was the scientists in the seabed were messing around with D-cells. Like they were still maybe around just a little bit after explosion or something, like long enough to see what happened with Vol-Opt, and let's do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That looks like a good idea of something to try. So they took it and applied D cells to their main computer, Olga. I guess they decided just to take their resident legendary hero and just jam him into it or something.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
Don't ask me.
Japanese RPG mad science involves smashing two things together.
Until they become a giant murder beast.
Yeah. Who kills all the scientists with the help of the infected AI as well. So the first phase of this final boss fight is a really cool idea. This is one case where I think they made it look cool, but it didn't actually influence the rhythm of the fight as much. Because Galgriffin flying around looks really cool, but you can't do anything a lot of the time without a certain setup.
Yeah.
Olgaflow is sort of spiraling around the elevator shaft that you're on, which is just speeding downwards. And he sort of strikes at you from there. He'll shoot at you from the walls, or he'll stab at you through the ground.
Like you're going down the elevator, and he's just free falling alongside.
Yeah, controlling his descent. So this is a neat fight, and it's also kind of interesting. his spread shot weapon is kind of like your own shot weapon. So he has sort of infected, grown-in versions of weapons on him.
Yeah.
So yeah, you defeat this form, and you end up at the bottom of the elevator shaft, at the absolute bottom of the seabed, and sort of reminiscent of Episode 1, you see his body and like a little glowy thing. Is that his mag or something?
Probably like maybe soul or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but in any case, you can sort of walk around this area for a bit, and like you can like trigger the boss by walking up to it, and then it's when you fight his second form, which is kind of a confusing fight. Like, I've beaten it a few times, but I haven't always really understood what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I know he has abilities just like Darkfall's third form, where he possesses a character, so damaging him damages them instead, which lets you kill your own teammates, by the way.
Yeah, and if it's faster, then they'll just let you die if they're jerks. So, because you can still, he still takes damage during this form, but you just also do.
Yeah.
And your characters are built to do damage to enemies with a lot more HP than you have. So when you take your own attacks on, another reason why Versus mode is so badly balanced is you die really quickly. He also summons, I guess when I was wondering why it was his mag, is because he sort of summons infected giant mags.
Yeah, he summons Gal and Gale.
Yeah.
They kind of either go up by his shoulders like a normal mag, or they'll start to come down to the ground. And I believe they do types of buffs to them while they're floating around on the ground, and you gotta kill them so they'll stop. And I think they also start like throwing mines everywhere too.
Yeah. So some good ideas, but this fight's not nearly as memorable. Even if it's maybe a little better balanced than Dark Souls 1-3, it's not... It's just weird. Because he's so big, he's really tall, and the camera doesn't really afford you a way to appreciate the scale difference. I mean, the elevator shaft, he was flying like his entire body length past you, so you could see it.
Not to mention the fact that while he was falling there, his little cagey bottom half is a bit smaller than the legs he sprouts once he enters the second form.
And so that's like, he becomes even bigger and even harder to see in that way. If you beat him, there's like an interesting Easter egg where you can come back to the arena, and I forgot, there's certain requirements that have to be met.
I believe you needed a red or blue weapon equipped.
Yeah, one of the specific weapons related to Rico or Chloe. And you can see their ghosts here. It's not much, but it's a nice touch, again. If you want to see them in their normal form, just standing. If you walk up to them, they vanish, but there they are. That's episode 2. Also, what's interesting is, in episode 1, like, because Rico is the daughter of the principal on board Pioneer 2, and after you beat the game, in the older, they had credit rolls after that, you see a still shot of him crying. Once someone broke the news to him that his daughter became the embodiment of evil, and then you killed her.
I think the music at that point actually does, like, kind of have some, like, little sadder tones to it.
Yeah, well, it's got lyrics and stuff, too, that are pretty sad. And then, once that part gets, like, fades out, then it turns this really, like, pumped up, like, orchestral thing, which is cool, but it's sort of like, I guess you don't want me to feel crappy about beating the game. Alright, I'm over it.
Yeah, when you kill Overflow, when it starts playing, what's the name of that ending theme? Well With Me? Yeah, that opening sort of wind work is really melancholy and sort of bittersweet, and really suits the tone of that perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about the atmosphere earlier, like, it's dark, and it's sort of not really cut with happiness, it's cut with really sad, depressing outcomes for all these people. There's even a theme for quests you finish when the outcome isn't very happy, that when you warp back to town, it plays like a sad string piece instead of the regular town music. And before you turn in the quest, you have to talk to the quest giver, who's usually pretty broken up about whatever happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, they don't change that for episode 2. And it's not as great of a conclusion, but it's, it's interesting. And then we get to episode 4.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
The areas in episode 4 are, there's, 4 sub-areas for the first one, and 2 for the second. The first area is called Crater. It's an above-ground desert. The second area is the underground desert. It's an underground desert.
Yeah.
Also, the enemies in the areas, there's some unique ones, but a lot of repeats.
I don't think there were even any unique area enemies in the...
I mean, there was the giant version of using the Booma skeleton, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, the Dominion-like guys.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
You have the 2 normal ones, but then the boss of them is actually like 5 times the size.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting is the well, it's really crappy, but okay, the design-wise, the default enemies in the underground desert look sort of like the enemies in the ruins. And the 2 versions, there's the Goron and the Pyro Goron, which are just, it's the regular one and then the slightly big one. And then the Goron Detonator, which is comparable to Overflow in size.
Yeah.
Except you can see it because, it spawns in and there's really high ceilings in the rooms where it spawns. I assume the high ceilings were made to accommodate this because it's the tallest enemy. And that's the 3rd level basic enemy, which is cool. Here's what's terrible about episode 4. They realized Rangers were overpowered and came up with multiple, all bad solutions to make Rangers bad against them.
Satellite lizards!
Oh.
So, satellite lizards, let's talk about them for a sec. So, satellite lizards, you could shoot them once, and afterwards... in fact, I'm not even sure you could shoot them once. If you shot them, they would turn invisible and they would take no damage. So you could not use ranged attacks against them at all. Just flat out no ranged attacks whatsoever. So, basically, if you were a ranger, you could not finish episode 4 by yourself.
Yeah. Oh no, you just equip a hunter weapon, and do way less damage than a hunter. And if you're high enough level to actually do episode 4, then your basic attack shouldn't be missing that often. Or you're doomed. In fact, even if you're at a high enough level to do difficulties like, say, Ultimate on episode 1, normal's still going to be a problem just because enemies have tons of HP and do damage you can't avoid. That knocks you down. Like, it's a property of the attack that it knocks you down, so you always lose time getting knocked down.
I think satellite lizards would actually poison you if you were close range to them as well.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't so bad because they otherwise weren't that aggressive. They moved really slowly, and
they had the wolf AI, so they wouldn't attack you unless they were behind you anyway. So it's not like they were a big problem.
Yeah, the big problem is everything else.
Zoo.
Yeah.
The zoo!
Yeah, the zoo is a bird enemy, which can shoot lasers at you that, do pretty decent damage and is fast, and then it can fly at you. It'll dash straight at you, which if it hits you, it knocks you down. If it misses you, it'll start spinning in circles, which the controls in this game aren't really suited for spinning in circles. If it hits you during this, you also get knocked down and take a lot of damage. So, and if it goes down to ground level, it'll fire like a spread shot of fireballs. Astarks, which have the Hilda Bear AI, where they'll jump at you from long range and punch you when you're close, except their punches also fire little punch waves, so even if you're not close, they can still hit you with punch waves. And if they get mad, then they'll buff themselves. Who's the least angry about this and wants to take it? Such a bad decision.
I forget the name of the enemy in specific, but it's like this giant bull enemy that if it rams you, you are instantly killed in most situations, even if, like, I was doing it when I was in very hard mode in episode 1 and 2. And, yeah, it one-shot me, and normal mode.
The Dorfon, that's what it is.
Yeah, the Dorfon.
You also notice the enemy names are getting increasingly abstract.
And of course, when they spawned in, they would immediately rush
you. Yeah, they
you.
spawn mid-charge, but even though you're in wide-open deserts, I found I got hit by them charging in inevitably there was nothing I could do compared to the seabed where they might miss me because they were smaller.
Yeah.
These things are trucks.
Yeah, they also seem to just come in, like, right behind you. So, God, those
They
things
even
were
make
bad.
tire screeching noises when they slow down, like they're a truck. Or Sonic the Hedgehog, but a truck. They can fire lasers out of their mouths. They can just stamp
He's
the
coming
ground.
for you.
They can stamp the ground when you're close by them. They can roar at you too. And they have a ton of health. Just scans of health. If you don't have a HP cutting weapon, even if you're ready for higher difficulties in episode 1 and 2, even on normal, it's gonna take some time. Like, killing these things in one hit is a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, we should mention the one good enemy, Sand Rappies.
Yes!
Rappies.
Have little drills!
Yeah, they brought them back, and instead of penguin beaks, they had little drill beaks, which sounds horrifying, but it's still cute, somehow.
Uh-huh.
And we didn't mention the cute thing about the Rappy-type enemies is when you take all their HP away, they don't die, they fall to the ground. They don't, like, sink in or, like, turn to blood puddles or anything. And either after a while, or if you're far enough away from them, or you're sort of far but you're doing something else, they'll peek around really quick and then get up and run off. So you never kill a Rappy.
But even then, you can like still hit them one more time.
Yeah. Oh, that's when you have to hit them if you want to get their item. Yeah. When they're running off like that. It's cute.
But then from there, then they like are invincible and they just keep running away.
Yeah, they just sort of slide on the ground comically for a while and get back up. And on ultimate difficulty, the ones in the forest in episode 1 can be huge.
Oh, I think I forget if that was a glitch or if that was.
No, I mean it only happens on ultimate. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're just randomly huge. It makes no difference. Mm-hmm. But they're huge. Yeah, Sand Rappies, they work the same way, pretty much. Though all the Rappies, the Zoos, and the Dorphons have a rare form. The Sand Rappies turn into Del Rappies, which are no longer cute because they're just like a combination of all the dark enemy designs shoved into a rag Rappy. Though they still make squeak noises, which is really bizarre. And they still do the cute look around thing when they get up.
I think they also did another dick move at somewhere where in like one of the episode 4 story missions, you enter a room and a cutscene happens and it spawns some enemies, but an NPC's like, "Oh, don't worry, I got this. You leave and I'll take care of them." And they shove you out of the door of the room and seal it behind you. Mm-hmm. One of the enemies in that mob is always a Del Rappy.
That you can't fight it for its
Yes. Like, people just saw it and thought they just had the most terrible luck ever. But no, they're just being assholes.
Yeah. And also, with those, what's can be frustrating is when NPC dialogue happens, it sort of, like, grabs your camera and controls sometimes. Or, like, usually it does that. Sometimes it can happen when you're running around, but usually they grab it.
I think the episode 4 story stuff had a bit more controlled cutscenes.
And even for episode 1, they sort of redid stuff to have more of a cutscene camera to it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, sometimes you'll kill a Rappy as the last enemy, and then the NPC will start talking to you, which is one of the behaviors that makes the Rappies get up earlier. So someone's just flapping their jaw at you, and then the thing gets up within view of your camera and runs away. Oh, that's awful.
There was the quest where you have to find the guy who's trying to study Rappies.
Yeah.
And he's dressed he's dressed up as a Rappy, so you have to find the Rappy that's actually a dude.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can also jump back into quest discussion in a little bit. But yeah. So the Zoos turn into Pazuzus, which are just worse. The same, way worse than they have horns. And then the Dorphons turn into Dorphon Eclairs. That's not like, I'm not saying they look like donuts, that's what they're called.
They're not filled with cream.
No.
No, they're just filled with murder and hate.
Yeah. So, did you think it had a lot of health before? Oh, this has more. You also thought its mouth laser was annoying? Well, now instead it casts grants, which you can't dodge.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had to laugh at that.
Yeah. Oh no, it's hilarious in a terrible way. I mean, normally when rare enemies show up, like, they're a bigger risk. Like, the rare Hildebears on Ultimate Forest can spit Megget at you instead of fireballs, which can suck, but...
The Hilda Blues on normal to very hard can freeze you, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not super common. You shouldn't be engaging them in that specific range ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bad because you'd like it to get punched too at that rate, but yeah. When these rare enemies show up, it's like, they drop, there's some really good items in episode 4, like really, really good. But you have to deal with these. And I understand wanting to make them like a challenge, but these are enemies that, in their default state, are way too difficult and not fun to fight.
Yeah.
Except the Del Rappies.
Yeah.
Because they didn't screw it up in any way. It's just the same thing again, which you can't give them credit for.
Yeah.
There's no boss to the crater.
Nope.
It's just a bunch of desert areas, and
it spams door phones on you, but...
So, worse than a boss, a very badly designed hard encounter. And then you get to the desert. And the default enemies there have an even worse counter against rangers.
I love it because it made me think of, like, it was like The Ring or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Garans, when you shoot them, teleport closer to you. And if you shoot them again, they teleport even closer. And remember how we said that the enemies in the Dolmalms and Dolmdarls in episode 2 in the seabed had long-range attacks that were longer than most of your basic hunter weapons. These enemies also have that.
They have it, but they have it in the most hilariously dumb way.
Yeah, you can't see it until they attack you.
They use the Buma archetype, like skeletal system and stuff. But when they attack you, they stop just short of what you would normally expect a Buma archetype to stop to attack you. And then they start to swing and they get stretchy arms that kill you. And it's my first experience, I was just laughing when I first saw that.
Yeah, they're giant laser arms. Which, and remember how we said that the third version of it's huge?
Yep.
That also gets huge.
So they can hit you from halfway across the room.
Yeah. So again, these are the default enemies you'll find in pretty much every room of the underground desert.
Mm-hmm.
Let that set the tone for you.
Welcome to hell.
Yeah. It's not even as far underground as the seabed, but it's hell. There's Marissas here, which are kind of funny because they're just like eyeballs on stalks, kind of, with some stabby tentacle arms. And they have a rare form, which is just a different color, and literally that's it. But they attack by body slamming you, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Though they're hard to fight. And there's more Rappies here, they repeat, the zoos come back.
Flying underground.
And then they introduce the worst enemy ever.
I love this enemy.
I'm just gonna leave this one to you, because I've only fought it a couple times.
Well, I've only fought it once. It's just hilarious to fight, because it counters everything. Like, during certain attacks, some of its parts aren't targetable. It can attack you from across the room, and it has pretty brutal melee attacks as well.
Yeah. It's called Gear to Blue, Will.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a flower, sort of.
It's a decellular reskin type enemy of the flower mini boss from
episode 2. Yeah.
Episode 2.
Wow, and yeah. If you want to stay far away, you also can't because it can suck you in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it drags you in and then melees you. I think it also can inflict stats.
Oh yeah.
I remember.
Oh yeah.
Paralyze and confusion.
Yeah, it basically does everything, and you die. Congrats.
Yeah, it's probably single worst PSO enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I probably was only that deep in the desert area once, and it was just like, the people I were with were like very well geared and stuff, and like we were walking through like this one room down there, and I just see it on the other side of the room, and everyone's just going to the next room. I was like, hey, what's this on the other side of the room? And they're just like, it's nothing. Leave.
Were you able to successfully leave, or did it pull you in with its vacuum powers?
It was like I think there's like a room in the second in that area that's like,
yeah, it's the winding, twisting room.
Lots of holes and stuff. So there wasn't a direct line between me and it.
I will say, the design of the underground desert and even the craters are really cool level designs. I love the hell out of them.
It's just that it wears out its welcome so heavily, so
yeah.
immediately.
Like, I like the idea of circling around the crater when you first get to it, and you're like kind of just clearing areas, moving on to the next rim of the crater and going through that for crater 2. In the underground desert, it's kind of crazy. There's
lots of different types of rooms.
Yeah, there was the twisting room, which is basically at the center, and then you kind of clear each branch to get to the next part of the center room until you get to the very end, and that's where they spawn that flower. In the last area, there's rooms filled with like really pretty crystals. There's sand pits, which if you fall down, takes you back to another area. They have like lava rooms with fireballs popping up, and just all these different room types in a single level.
They found a way to incorporate traps without making them mines that pop up out of the ground out of nowhere. Or little turrets. It's a little more, it feels more natural, environmental.
Yeah. Also, the rim of the sand pit, of course, is like 100 confused traps.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
Getting confused in this game makes you just run in random directions. Though, interestingly, while you're confused, it's the only way to change your direction after you've attacked. As if you're confused, you'll just randomly spin in another direction when you do your second and third hits. So if you're surrounded, it's actually not that bad. Weirdly, unless you want to get away from the enemies, which you probably do.
Yeah, then that's impossible. But, like, you push forward and then you go in every direction.
Yeah, use a soul atomizer to cure your confusion. And then we get to the boss, which can also, in a series first, there's a rare version of it.
And there's also a story version of it.
There's a certain quest chain where you can fight a different version of this boss, or the rare version. And they're different colors.
Yeah.
They're different colors. Yeah, anyways. This boss I fought also, and I had no idea what was going on. I just attacked whatever was in front of me.
So basically, I couldn't get very far because with 2 people, even geared for very hard mode, the normal version of that boss will just wipe you out without a second thought.
Yeah.
But basically, you're going for the crystal on its tail, and then there's all sorts of other crystal weak points you can fight. So you're basically breaking the crystals around its tail until you get a chance to attack it for real.
Shamberton, which has not a lot of like interesting, like there is story elements surrounding it, but there's not like, it's not a person.
Yeah.
There's no like emotional state.
Just it's more akin to like Derole than Falls.
Yeah, it is a bit too.
I will say it has probably the best boss theme in the series outside of the episode 3 last boss theme.
It's a very cinematic boss too.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
It kind of almost feels like a prototype of PSO2 bosses.
Oh,
yeah.
Even though then they still went through PSU.
Well,
No, that's perfect.
Yeah. Well, I don't think No One's Perfect really gives an idea of how bad PSU was.
We'll get to that.
There's no excuse.
But also, somewhat bizarrely, the plot of Episode 4 sets up a lot of elements for Phantasy Star Online Episode 3 on the GameCube. to sort of explain, we could compress things into cards, maybe. Which is not like a thought people have, I don't think. I was like, oh, a Puma, I want to put it on a card. Why?
Well, I think that was more like of the One Faction's thing, who were the more naturalistic people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even other people, well, I want to put this saber on a card. Like, just hold it.
Well,
it's a sword.
It's like storage.
I guess. I mean, you can carry like 50 swords in your inventory if you want. I don't know. I mean, yeah, there were storage limitations in Phantasy Star Online, but I would not use them to create a single-use saber. So, I don't know. I mean, it was a craze of a time. That's why it did. But it's weird that they decided to make the story justify it after the fact.
So it was pretty neat how they sort of wrote in the idea that, I hope a whole bunch of people have killed Darkfells and Overflow a bunch of times.
Yeah. That was an interesting thing to sort of concession to how it's played. And the plot in Blueburst has a lot more importance, and there was more cutscene stuff in the GameCube version. Like the very last quest you get in episode 1, From the Depths. In the Dreamcast version, there's not any camera work, so there's build-up to it, because you have to finish every other quest, and it's done per area. And you have to complete the other ones. But you complete all the Ruins quests, and then one more pops up. And this has a lot of, you're seeing lots of ghosts, and they'll, be having a discussion, and then you'll find their bodies somewhere. And if you've made certain choices during earlier quests, then you can also sort of have a final showdown with a guy who was your partner during the very first training quest. Blueburst added storyline quests, which you can only do in multiplayer mode with the government quest for some reason, but...
Yeah. They have a history of not being too good at retrofitting things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, there's quests for all the episodes, in fact.
They prefer to build onto things with duct tape and paper clips.
Yeah. It's very much that, so... Yeah. The additional camera work is nice considering that.
Yeah, that was what I was saying about that episode 4 quest.
Yeah.
Because, they just have the camera centered, on this group of enemies, but the center of the screen is the Del Rappy.
They maybe got too good at it then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, you don't really play Phantasy Star Online for this story, and, what's implied is definitely, dark and interesting enough on its own, alongside the messages, which are a good optional but quick and, flavorful way to inject story. And then having quests where you hang out with people who suddenly have pretty much, low anime quality character arcs is just hey, it's me, Ash, and, the guy from the first quest. And, you had enough of an arc because, in the first quest I find you knocked out, beaten by basic enemies, and then in the final quest you're taking down enemies in the ruins with the double saber. And, you're obviously a lot better. That's an interesting arc. I mean, not but it's enough. It tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
And then to have more character development, they don't have anything really interesting to say.
Yeah, I think, though they start bringing a lot of them back around for, the episode 4's story.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sort of the point where they didn't really realize that less can be more.
Yeah.
Or they stopped realizing that.
Right. I mean, one of my favorite, just random interactions is on an early quest you meet an NPC, and a lot of the early NPCs are just the default character models for the classes. But one of the early ones you meet is Eleanor Camuel, who's when you meet her, she's like, "I'm Eleanor Camuel. I'm an android," and the default android character class looks so much like a robot made. It's like, of course you're an android. Why would you? I don't go to be "Hi, I'm Sid Menon. I'm a human." That's so strange. Is that supposed to be Bond, James Bond, except you state your race? But yeah, in one of the later quests, because there's a lot of weird, research stuff she's involved in, and she's totally willing to spill the beans to you all the time, which, no one else ever wants her to do. But in one quest, she's just in the town area, she's not in the quest area. There's a soldier next to her. If you talk to him, he says, "You there, don't talk to the android." But of course, you're like, "Oh, it's Eleanor." And then if you talk to her, she'll say something like, "Oh, I have to go, bye." if you talk to the soldier again, he just like, I have nothing to say to you. Just little things like that. And also, Bernie and Sue, who like know each other, but and like they can both fix doors and say, "I have the knack."
Yep.
So yeah, that chain I said where you have a showdown with the guy who trained you in the first quest. That's Kirik, who's the male android hunter archetype. Yeah. In the first quest, like if the last thing he says to you is just like, "Oh, become much stronger, and then you might be able to rival me one day." Ha ha ha, and then he disappears.
In order to get to that fight, you do have to encounter him a few more times.
Yeah, it's really, like, bizarre, though. You don't have that final showdown with him unless you do some specific things through quests. Like, there's one where Sue asks you your name, and you have to not tell her your name to, like, as part of that chain of events. I think one of the reasons I don't mind some of the more difficult, like, obscure things you can do in Dark Souls is because this game really set the stage for stuff I liked in games, and that is so obscure. I don't even really know why it's relevant that you don't tell Sue your name. Still, I never really figured it out. Yeah, and even if you want to have that final showdown with Kirik, you have to finish the quest, pretty much, and then just go back down to the ruins and check your map.
Yeah.
And then you can get his scythe, because he's just the devil there.
Oh, like one of the encounters with him is you have to. It is on the bride. Quest. You have to. You complete. Yeah, you complete the quest, and she goes on ahead and goes back up to Pioneer 2. But if you look at your map and you've done the stuff before leading up to this part, you can find him like way the fuck farther in.
Yeah, you check your map and there's like a little arrow, which it's normally for other players, but that's how they make NPC allies work, because they're party members. And you'll just see like an arrow for someone, like way in the distance. Like, what is that? Like, if you even have to decide to do that.
Like, you have to practically go through the other half of Caves 2 in order to get to him. So you just walk up to him, and he like starts doing the weird alternating cap stuff.
Yeah, to show that he's just going bonkers or something, I don't know. It's confusing. But if you do tell Sue your name and do a whole string of other stuff, then there's a quest in episode 2 called Seat of the Heart where he can ally with you, and that's the payoff for that.
Yeah.
It's very strange and confusing. And like I said, the story as a reward isn't... The more they put it, the less interesting it gets.
But it also gives you, like, an item.
Yeah, the Regal Ring, which is a shield which, if you die, it revives you and disappears.
Yep, it's escaped all.
Yeah. But it's a shield that takes a lot of work to get. And it's not a great shield, either. Yeah, so criticisms.
I will say I would have liked an actual lock-on. Like, just holding the left trigger or something.
Honestly, like, in terms of, improving the combat system, because like I said, there's a lot I like about it. But it's not modern at all.
No. Like, at this point, if I get that itch for Phantasy Star Online, it's less playing the game and more just listening to the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah. Recommendations for the soundtrack. Don't mess with it.
I still really enjoy playing.
Yeah.
Phantasy Star
It's still
Online
fun,
too,
but as a retro game. Those marks.
I just feel like its sequels never quite did it right again.
Yeah.
So
they never quite captured the same magic.
Yeah, they, for one, like Phantasy Star Universe and Phantasy Star Online 2 have a problem where the settings are really unfocused and just they kind of throw everything into the mix and don't really care what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like PSO, they focused on Regal itself, and then I guess with these other games, they really wanted to, since they have different planets, they wanted to give each planet their own little identity and stuff too. But for some people, I guess it kind of just clashes a lot.
But one thing I definitely picked up is none of them there's nothing scary about them, which it's not... PSO's not really a horror game, but like when we discussed the atmosphere, there's something dark there and like frightening replaced with depressing. Okay. So in terms of the... I remember back before Phantasy Star Online 2 came out, and which is why I still want to give it a shot, is so many of its ideas seemed pulled from my idea of how to improve it. But one thing that is sort of there is, like, weapons should be a little more differentiated. And I guess this is something that you can get out of Dark Souls. Like, there's, a straight sword, but a different one will have different attacks. Not always entirely different, but, there's something more to it. Because getting a saber that's green, and then it's blue, and then purple, red, and gold, like, that's not very exciting. Like, it seems like you could just make it relevant to how strong the weapon is, what color it is.
They kind of still sort of did that in PSO2, but it's like, but rares are just flowing everywhere from higher difficulties, then they just fall onto, and like people on higher difficulties just can't get rid of them fast enough, so you can at least get yourself armed fairly well early on.
Yeah, and there's other, like, with PSO2, they have a problem where they have the extra abilities, but to get those extra abilities that differentiate the weapons and make them actually their own thing, you have to at least grind them to plus 10, which is millions and millions of Meseta to do.
Yeah, on higher end
things.
And
then you reset it back, so it's now a weaker weapon, but at least it has the title. And then you have to do it again and again to get the full efficiency of that title. So...
Yeah, there's a combination of ideas there, though. Like, when Phantasy Star Zero on the DS, it replaced doing a special attack with weapons to get their special effects. So instead of, I'm going to do this otherwise normal attack, but it's going to be really inaccurate, and it might do fire damage, they had a percentage for, like, effects triggering or how much elemental damage they did. And I think they could do that, and maybe not even give weapons completely different movesets, but as, like, a compromise, there's saber moves, and then maybe there's, like, a special fire attack you do that's a different move. Or, like, and, like, rare weapons, like the chainsaw, which is a great weapon idea, because it's the big sword, but it's got, like, photon teeth going on it. Maybe make the health draining attack more chainsaw-like and less just swinging a hunk of metal around.
And I thought that things like PSO having the weapons that were kind of blends of each other, and just, like, the weapon types that were only in rare weapons and didn't show up in most of the gameplay, were interesting and made getting those rare weapons feel really satisfying, and just you wanted to use them and show them off.
Yeah,
where in future games, the only thing that matters is the number of stars under their name.
They're, like, basically...
stat sticks.
Yeah.
That was especially apparent in Universe.
Yeah, Universe was especially bad about that. On PSO2, like, the movesets seem pretty similar. So, like, you're doing cool stuff with the default weapons, which it's hard to say, like, disempower players and make them weaker, but there's a correct way to do it so that the regular, like, moveset feels good to use, and the especially powerful stuff feels really cool. But, like, the empowerment level of, say, having Heaven Punisher in Phantasy Star Online, which is a big deal, doesn't really match, like, jumping in the air and doing a combo with a giant hulking sword in Phantasy Star Online 2, which you can just do.
They're different games is the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ultimately that's why, like, we're discussing this, is because I think an improved Phantasy Star Online 1 doesn't necessarily look like Phantasy Star Online 2. Or Phantasy Star Zero. Definitely not Phantasy Star Universe.
I really just want a Phantasy Star Online that feels like the original in a sense, but improves on its weaknesses, because there's no other games that are like it.
Yeah.
For all its flaws, it did so much right, and it was so satisfying to play, that even if you get bored of it, you still want more.
I mean, and there's definitely an element of, like, oh, you're just getting addicted. But it doesn't really actively try to sort of sucker you in with this sort of numbers getting higher thing. Like, that happens, but the rate isn't especially quick unless you play on certain free servers.
Yeah.
But even then, like, it doesn't shove things in your face. Like, the red box, like, making an item bright red and having its, like, name appear in gold, all caps, when you identify it. Like, that's the most manipulation they really try to pull on you.
Yeah. All the different mechanics are done so well that just playing it feels good.
Though while we're on that note, I do appreciate weapons being rare, but these numbers are gigantic.
Yeah!
They are unacceptably huge.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Heaven Punisher is good. It's not that good.
Yeah.
When you can't fire lasers from the sky, it's a regular handgun. And other weapons are really difficult to get, but they're just, like, interesting. There's a certain, like, weapon type called launchers, which can pierce through enemies. They don't do a ton of damage, but they can hit multiple parts of bosses and hit crowds. And then there's a handgun called Ruby Bullet, which has some properties of launchers. The bullets don't pierce, but they can hit enemies at, like, really high altitudes and ranges and stuff like that. It's an interesting weapon, but it's really difficult to get, and it's not very good.
Yeah.
But it would be more encouraging if the weapon drops were a bit more sensible.
Yeah.
And maybe if there's a system in place that, okay, like 1 in 24 chance, but if you kill 24 of this enemy, which they still need to drop those numbers in some cases, you get it.
Yeah.
And then at the other side of the coin, I want to say they'd want to promote, if they have some sort of economy system in place, they'd still want to figure a way to promote that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really like a marketplace at all for items. Like, unless you find a forum and can organize trades, you're just sort of shouting in the lobby.
Yeah.
Also, one thing they definitely would have to, I definitely want them to change in terms of just intro weapon balances. There's a weapon in Phantasy Star Online, it's been in since the first version, which seems really cool and it's difficult to get. There's a bunch of katanas you can find that are named Agito and they have a year after them. But the hardest one to get is the Agito 1975, and if you take it to a certain guy in a quest who says he's looking, for a specific sword, if you have it and, like, it's in your inventory and you show it to him, he'll say, oh, this is, like, the legendary Orochi Agito, like, and it becomes a much better weapon. And it does a lot of damage per hit, and it fires, like, an energy wave as a special attack. Cool. But it only does 3 hits, so, like, the Twin Brand or any of the other much easier to get multi-hit weapons outpace it by a lot. And I mean, that's a tough question, like it's always been in games to balance out hits versus damage, but they need to do something. Like maybe its special attack could be more interesting, or if there's some sort of special abilities with weapons, like what if you could parry with it? That would change everything. Like if it wasn't even especially strong, but suddenly you have this whole new mechanic to this weapon that increases the pace of a fight. Another change I think might be interesting is mags are neat, but they really are accessories.
Yeah.
With stats attached. And Phantasy Star Universe made it so that there's some like a partner machine you could feed, and it would turn into like an android teammate.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, they don't necessarily need to do that, but I mean, some mags look like giant shoulder cannons. There's got to be something.
Oh yeah, in PSO2 you can as long as you keep it fed, it'll attack in some fashion and perform some other actions like heal you in certain constraints or buff you or.
Yeah. And imagine if like the photon blast, like having them be cutscenes is pretty neat. Imagine if they did something like it would just turn into a weapon you equipped, or
that would be cool.
It would affect your like combat skills, so you would do like an endless combo or something like that, or have bigger range.
See, I really liked Infinity Blast from Phantasy Star Portable 2 Infinity, because those were the coolest thing. They were just... everything about them was really satisfying, and since each race had a different, like, ability, it gave them a lot more personality to play as them, and more reason to look between them. And just like, the Dooman's Infinity Blast, they basically, in general, they have high attack stats, but low defensive stats, and The Infinity Blast basically is you can't heal or do anything like that, but you get to shoot lasers out of your fingers and make things blow up. It is the best.
Yeah, one thing they could definitely backport, like, there's some games where I feel like maybe one feature could really, really help it out. Like, I prefer Max Payne 1 to Max Payne 2, but 2, after you dive, you don't have to get back up to keep shooting. That's the one feature I backport in that. In this, dodge rolling.
Yes.
They added it in, like, Phantasy Star Zero immediately. It's in Phantasy Star Portable 2.
Yep.
And, you know, there's a lot of mobility options in Online too. But yeah, if you could dodge, like, roll actively, that would help a lot.
It would.
Along with an improved lock-on system. And better loot balance. I mean, one thing we didn't mention about Episode 4 is there's a lot of rare items, just like a ton, all over the place, and they have interesting interdependencies, but they work out to be not that, like, It's not a tactical consideration, it's just like a cute bonus. Like, attack 10% faster, that's, 1, almost imperceptible, and 2, there's units you can equip to attack 40% faster, and it's not cumulative. You'll just attack 40% faster, and that's better for every other weapon combo.
Yeah.
So, definitely better balance for that. And, I mean, I feel like if you have units that increase your attack speed, I mean, that's such a better option that should maybe be excised entirely.
Yeah, definitely.
Just make the weapon speeds more important on their own. It's, in a lot of ways, this works out to be more like Dark Souls, but it's got more of a fantasy theme. And its horror is also more apparent, and we said there's some gross stuff in Phantasy Star Online, but they go whole hog. Dark Souls or Demon Souls. So, like, if you think like things a little bit icky to gross you out, you can't really go anywhere else, especially in a sci-fi setting. Like, if there's horror in sci-fi, it's really violent.
Yeah.
Well, I liked the way Phantasy Star Online did it was just they just kind of had a weird abnormal appearance without being exactly gross.
Yeah, it was like more like, what is that? Not like that's a liver or something. It wasn't an obviously gross thing.
Yeah. It just didn't match up to anything you would see.
Yeah.
So, like, they had weird forms without heads and all of that.
Yeah.
And glowing eyes.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'd even add jumping, really, to an improved Phantasy Star Online one. Like, that changes things a lot, and it's interesting, but it becomes a different game at that point.
Mm-hmm. I think the slow pace for Phantasy Star Online is something that should kind of be preserved, just because it's a very important part of how the atmosphere worked, where if you're just rushing past everything, you don't notice those little details.
Yeah.
That's true.
Alright, anything else?
Not that I can think of.
No?
Yeah, I'm good.
So, if you like Phantasy Star Online, this is Phantasy Star Online 2 through back channels. Phantasy Star Zero on the DS is kind of expensive secondhand.
It's a good game.
I'm not going to say anything in any specific direction, but DS emulation is pretty good these days.
Yeah.
Wow, what a coincidence.
And I will say, there's a big problem with Phantasy Star Zero, because while it's probably the closest you'll get to Phantasy Star as... Well, I think Phantasy Star Portable 2 gets closer, but Phantasy Star Zero has the problem of getting up difficulties requires doing a 7-hour dungeon that you can't do in multiplayer and can't save in between parts of. So have fun with that if you ever plan to do that.
DS emulators also have nice built-in cheat functions.
Yeah.
Funny story. And it has like a anime styling, like
there's
exactly.
It kind of looks like Wild Arms.
Yeah, it's very cartoony Western, and Phantasy Star Portable 2 is pretty good. But if you want to start playing the game in earnest, get ready for tons of cutscenes. There's a lot of talking in that game.
There's tons of cutscenes. The characters, except for Crotch, are unlikable.
And the likable character's named Crotch.
Yeah. Then there's just the whole thing where you're better off importing Phantasy Star Portable 2 Infinity because it fixes almost all the flaws of Phantasy Star Portable 2, which are some pretty serious flaws. Basically, there's some really bad class balance where everything except for Vanguard and Hunter are not really that viable. So, generally, I'd recommend PSP2 Infinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, PSP emulation is pretty good these days.
Yeah, really.
They actually fixed the unique rendering error that
They sure did.
Like, you have to set a specific setting on the emulator, or else you're going to get hilarious rendering issues where things that are nearby are being rendered after things that are far away. So everything's invisible.
Lastly, Phantasy Star Nova is probably my second favorite of all of them. It has some lack of enemy diversity, and...
Yeah, there's some straight recolors of PSO2 enemies.
Oh, almost everything is a recolor. I just think, at the same time, the gameplay, like the balance and gameplay are a lot tighter, except for some reason, they took out the main mechanic of wands, so they're useless.
Oh.
Basically, they just have higher attack stats.
Yeah, they have the higher striking attack, but they can't really do much.
anything
Well,
with
I
it.
mean, like, right now,
The hit
a
thing.
striking attack base build for wands is actually kind of strong at the moment.
Also, you have to import it, and it's a Vita
Yep.
exclusive.
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
but it's a good
that's
game.
two potential critics. Yeah, the Vita has a lot of good stuff, but it's still quite expensive.
I think it does work on the PlayStation TV, though, I believe.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Much less expensive.
Also, the two new weapons, Piles and Halos, are really good, and I wish they would have taken them into Phantasy Star Online too.
Yeah, also, let's see. I mean, there's Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2. Like, it's obviously pretty different, but I think it scratches a lot of the same itches, and in terms of, like, functionally, just how it plays, how combat works is sort of a lot of the things you'd want out of Phantasy Star. And it's got rare drops, but, I mean, after Phantasy Star Online, someone being like, I could never find this weapon, it's so rare, it's like, I've seen someone get it. Like, I know someone out there has it, which is more than I can say for a lot of things in Phantasy Star Online.
Even during Universe was like, everything that starts rare slowly gets less rare. Unless, though there are still edge cases that retain their rarity throughout all time, like any of Elder's 12-star weapons.
Yeah. The problem with Phantasy Star Universe's rare drops is that even if they weren't rare, you had to craft them.
Oh,
Yeah, you get blueprints, you don't get weapons.
Yeah.
So you have to grind, even once you get the rare drops, you have to grind, and there's a chance that the rare drop, which is a disc, that is usable only once, so if you fail the recipe, you can't craft it again.
Like, I think
It's-
one of the early Psycho Wands failed, even though it had like a 90% success rate.
That is awful.
Don't forget upgrading your weapons had a chance of just destroying them completely.
Oh yeah!
Also, in later Phantasy Star games after Online, you'll see that they sometimes have areas where it's like, oh, you can go back to the forest. Consider it more like if they made a theme park version of that area to go through, because that's what those are. Those are blatant nostalgia trips with, like, zero subtlety.
Which it kind of culminates in Infinity when you outright go and get Red Ring Rico and Flowen's partner cards and do adventures with them. And also Colonel Sanders.
Oh yes. That is one thing good about 2 Infinity, is the really, really dumb things they were doing with advertisements in the game. So you could be like Hatsune Miku and Megaruga, but you could also be Colonel Sanders and just all sorts of really ridiculous shit.
Yeah. No, that's product placement done right, as far as I'm concerned.
And there was also, like, the items they gave you for those were actually pretty good early on and could get you through the early game. So that was actually really nice. Especially the chain whip, which was kind of awesome.
Yeah, I think I used the cheese weave shield for probably far longer than I should have.
I just love everything about that.
Yeah, so you have some choices if Phantasy Star Online is maybe too tough of a nut to crack. Though, honestly, if you want to play the game itself, you have a couple choices too about servers that are free to play on.
And deal with some of the drop issues.
Yeah. Oh, well, obviously you can't expect consistent... I mean, Sega themselves didn't really pull it off all the time. So people doing it while letting you play for free entirely. Yeah, you're not going to expect much.
My one thing is just, if you want something specific, abandon ye here, ye all hope.
Yeah.
Just
pretty much.
Okay.
don't.
That's it.
I've played PSO2 for its entire run so far because I enjoy fighting monsters and killing the mobs. Even my biggest thing that's prevented me from burning out in this is just never expecting anything.
Which sounds bad, but I mean, if you just want to wind down and play a game that is enjoyable to play, then instead of...
Yeah.
If you want to be the best at it, it's not geared towards making that easy at all.
Yeah.
Or very rewarding.
Yeah.
But for the original Phantasy Star Online, the first time I played Blueburst, it was on a server called Stack.
Yes.
SCHT hack.
The quality is what you would expect.
The most useful feature is you have a communal item storage box, so you can trade stuff between characters without having to trust someone and hand them items, or drop items in a room and then hope no one locks it and come back and no one takes it in the meantime.
Or buying a second controller for Xbox and trading with yourself offline.
Yeah, I mean, or if you play it on GameCube, you can obviously just make a second character because you can fit 3 or 4 characters on a memory card in that version.
Yep.
Yeah. If you want to get the GameCube version, the regular, I mean, because that's the only one with split screen and 4 controller ports on the console, and it works on the Wii.
And is able to still function anymore because PSO Xbox both required Legacy Xbox Live, and it required you to still connect to the server anyway, I think. The game servers.
Yeah, there's a workaround for the GameCube version, so you can play on free servers.
Like, Xbox is just dead.
The only problem is that on the GameCube version, you won't get to enjoy, and I say this in air quotes, you won't get to enjoy the tower missions.
Well, you see, that's the thing. Well, there's the regular release, which on the low end, like, the lowest I've ever seen it is $20 used with, like, just a disc. I've seen it around 40. I lucked out and got it for about 15 from a game store because the guy knew me. Here's the thing, before I saw that copy, I saw Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 Plus for the GameCube, which includes the tower missions and the shop quest that lets you customize S-rank weapons from challenge mode. Now, it was $5, but I asked my girlfriend at the time if she would be willing to play it with me, because otherwise I didn't want to hog the TV for hundreds of hours. And she said, it's up to you, and I thought, I'll skip it.
Oh.
And then, like, went home that day, and I changed my mind, I should go back sometime to that store and get it. And I looked up secondhand prices. The lowest price was $120 for just the disc, and I went back and it was gone.
Oh.
Yeah. If you want to play that version, GameCube emulation is pretty good these days.
The only problem with the tower is that once you get to the top, the camera is...
Yeah, the boss is the camera, and there's an enemy there too.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
We didn't really talk about that. I've never beaten that enemy.
I've not either, but I've got to experience that camera because the Ultima server, has that camera for certain missions.
Epsilon, that's that boss.
Yeah, you just had these shields change color. They make them pretty much invincible to that element, but also the shields fan out from him and start spinning around him quickly.
Yeah, so don't spend $120 so you can do that.
So guess what happens when they are blue or purple?
You either freeze or you get killed instantly. Ta-da! So yeah, don't spend $120 and do that. The secondhand seller doesn't need that money from you so you can do that. It's not going to go to Sega, who definitely don't deserve $120 for those design decisions. So, emulate if you want that. Oh, Ilgo's kind of neat.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not a super special. There's recolors in there. Yeah. So emulate the Plus version if you want to do the Tower Quest offline. It's not super expensive for the GameCube, and you can play split screen with your friends. I think it's a more satisfying, fulfilling experience than, say, Gauntlet Dark Legacy.
You would want to do split screen challenge mode.
There's different rewards, which are all like gimmick weapons, but yeah.
Like, if you're doing it just for challenge mode, you're not really relying on the rewards per se. You're just doing challenge mode.
Yeah, but it's there. It's present if you want to do it with people on the couch. In addition to Stack, there's Ultima servers, which is the one I played on most recently. With me, it was her idea, I think.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. And that's a pretty good. The experience rates are super boosted, and the rare enemy appearance rates are really high. So you will see like more within like a half hour of rares than you will in your entire lifetime otherwise.
Let me tell you about Disca of Liberator.
Oh, yeah. Those junk rares that are like supposedly exciting will become pretty plain.
I mean, it does fix things like the 200,000 drop rate.
Yeah, the drop rates, like them being boosted, is definitely appreciated. And the faster leveling will cut down on the grind required to go up difficulty levels. There's definitely good aspects to it. The thing is, though, normally when you level up in the game, you're feeding your mag to increase your stats.
Yeah.
So you'll be at, like, I got to level 20 and I was still getting destroyed by certain enemies and I couldn't equip a bunch of stuff, and I realized that's because my stats have been going up, but I haven't fed my mag as much in this time frame. Yeah. So the power curve is a little different. Keep that in mind if things seem a little nonsensical in terms of your character's development. It's just the accelerated experience throws things off. And stores will stock more expensive items before you probably have the money to afford them, so...
Yeah.
But if you can deal with all that, like, I think it's probably one of the better ways to experience Phantasy Star Online.
A good, accelerated version.
Yeah. Like, if, for example, like, you now work a full-time job and aren't a high school student or a college student.
You just don't want, like, you want to come in, see what it's all about, see a number of things, and then be on your way.
Yeah. I mean, I still put a fair amount of time into it, and I haven't quite gotten to ultimate difficulty, but I've gotten much closer in much quicker time. So, and as an online, it has a community, so you can use the message board and maybe trade some items to get rares you want. So, the advantages of playing online. When I say I played it offline, I played the Dreamcast version offline, and I played the GameCube version offline. And that's a little under half my playtime with Phantasy Star Online ever, which is the game I've played the most of any game, which is why this is episode 1. And I liked it a lot. I think that, that might say some negative things about me, but I think it says some positive things about the game. Yeah, I think it's definitely worth a shot. Like, if any of this sounded at all appealing to you, it's definitely worth playing it. With the right mindset, I think it's still a really enjoyable game.
Yep.
Okay, so if you want to follow the show on Twitter, it's ThoughtABTGames. And on Tumblr, where we'll have the show notes, it's wethoughtAboutgames.tumblr.com. If you want to follow me, my handle's at BeamSplashX. Kirby, where can they find you?
On Twitter, it's at Kirbysuperstar. And also, I have a website where I type too much about games nobody gives a crap about, which is obscureoldgames.com.
Alright, excellent. Yeah, it's a really solid site, by the way, for anyone who doesn't... Yeah, give it a look if you're interested in this. Kirby also covers the other Phantasy Star games in the series, including the text adventures. NextTime, where can they find you?
At NextTime SA on Twitter. You'll just see me tweeting links to the PSO2 blog for the updates on the Japanese site a lot. or cat pics.
You're working on something PSO2 related, aren't you?
That's in the oven still, but it's just a database website that's actually a database, as opposed to individual Excel sheets or wiki pages.
So, that'll be mentioned there, if anywhere else, first, I assume.
Yeah.
Miijhal, how about you?
So you can find me at Saranadenberg, spelled SARAAUTTENBRG, on Twitter. I hope you like Saphism, because, yeah.
And occasionally video games.
Occasionally.
Same for all. I mean, if you follow my personal Twitter account, you're just gonna get a bunch of weird jokes, and sometimes I might be sad. So, if you don't want to deal with any of that, that's what the podcast Twitter account is for. Alright, so, thanks for listening, everyone. Keep thinking. Good night.
Good night.
Oh no, I stopped.
God damn it. I also didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I just introduced everyone else.
Whoops.
I'm Sid Menon.